I remember a year ago when Kamala Harris was campaigning on price gouging. Here's what she was saying at the time.
4 big corporations control more than half of the markets in beef, pork, and poultry. Without meaningful competition, farmers and ranchers don't get to choose who they sell to. Or put another way, our farmers and ranchers have to pay whatever these 4 big companies say they have to pay, by and large. But that's only half of it. These companies can use their position as middlemen to overcharge grocery stores and ultimately families.
I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food. I'm not going to apologize for the fact that we need to actually deal with accountability when these, not all, in fact, most don't, but when companies are taking advantage of the desperation and the need of the American people.
Again, Republicans ridiculed her for that, and Trump is using a very similar playbook. And I don't want to get into the
between price controls and price gouging and consumer protection investing.
What I'm talking about is what Trump is saying, which is what Biden was saying, which is that there are a few companies that can set the prices, and they set the prices for the entire marketplace, essentially. Look, you can argue about the good or the bad of that, but the bottom line is that that entire strategy of just dealing with sort of individual industries and not dealing with the broader consumer sentiment is one of the reasons that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris lost the last election. And Trump is doing the same thing now.
No, I don't agree with any of that, right? There shouldn't be price controls, shouldn't be taken on singular industries. But I do believe that, look, we've had 3.8% GDP growth. We've had, inflation. The rate of inflation has been cut virtually in half since the Biden administration versus the Trump administration. We've seen that cut in half. So this,
but
if we're going to take snapshots, I mean, what you've done is
since Trump came into office,
we've taken snapshots of, snapshots in time of where the economy is, and then, what happens is there is hysteria over some of these things, right? And you have folks that are overreacting to some of these things, and a reaction to it, that quite frankly isn't justified. And when we have a shutdown right now that's impacting the hearts and minds of everybody in this country.
What do you think?
So of course people are not
$100
in a good place in the
What do you think
economy.
are not overreacting?
Yeah. What do you think people are overreacting?
So I think look, if inflation is coming down, which it has come down, the average inflation rate has come down. Prices have not come down.
Hold on a second. Yeah.
But average inflation rate has come down.
The point on the inflation piece, as it relates to Trump, is that inflation was trending downward, and now it's trending back up. That is part of the problem. That yes, inflation is lower than it was, during the peak of inflation, but the trajectory is the wrong trajectory. That's the problem for this economy.
But there is growth creep.
But the growth that doesn't translate to people's pocketbooks only matters to a very particular class of American society. So if, as Tiffany said, you're paying $200 more for groceries, I can personally vouch for the fact that my kids are obsessed with Honeycrisp apples, and they used to be $2.19 a pound, and now they're at least $4.
Or Halloween candy
this is reality.
How much people were spending for Halloween candy this year? And first of all, we just saw Trump lie. We need to acknowledge this man is a liar. A toddler from the Oval Office calling sleepy Joe Biden lying about numbers is ridiculous. And I wish people who are defending him could acknowledge, yes, that is a lie. Secondly, people are spending over $200 more at the grocery store. You showed the data yourself. At that time in September of 2024, we should remember that was when Trump was running around the country screaming about inflation being out of control. This is a result, as you said, of his policies. When you deport or disappear millions of law-abiding, undocumented migrants who do the work, when 70% of your workforce doesn't come up, 70% of your crops don't get picked, and they die, that is going to drive up the cost of food. When you impose senseless tariffs, if you get an avocado from Mexico at a 17% tariff, guess what? Giant public Safeway, they're going to pass that cost along to you. Inflation is a real thing. For people who think the economy means the market, that's one thing. For people who know the economy is what I'm spending every month and I'm seeing my debt-to-income ratio reverse, it is not a good feeling.
And Jim, I just want to say two things about this sort of data that you were presenting. The first is that We last year at this time projected that we'd see GDP growth in this country this year of around 2.7%. We've seen GDP growth in the first half of the year at about 1.5%. A lot of that is coming, in fact, from AI investments. Not a lot of it is coming from this administration's economic policies. And the second thing that's just really important to say, Abby's totally right. Inflation was trending downwards, but these tariffs are the most inflationary policies of our lifetimes. And their impacts are just starting to show up in durable goods that are at high tariff rates.
All right, Natasha Sarin, thank you very much.